Hi everyone, this is Heather Lottanen from the Flourish.Academy. This is episode 498. I work with a lot of photographers who are thinking about starting their business or maybe have been into photography for a while but are thinking maybe they could charge and they're not sure where they want to take it. And they oftentimes tell me that they want everything to be right before they start putting their work out there. To which I respond, right according to whom? What does right mean? So for some people, that means, well, I want to be able to take good photos. Okay, well, what are good photos? I mean, if you can take a photo, you are a photographer. So, and what does a good photo mean anyway? Because you might take a photo that you hate and I might love it. So again, good according to whom? I was talking to a friend a couple weeks ago and she said, by the way, she's a competent photographer. She's been doing it for years. And she said, well, before I start putting myself out there as a photographer that charges, a real photographer, again, whatever that means, she said, I just want to have everything lined up. I said, okay, what does that look like for you? What does that mean to have everything lined up? Because for some people, they don't want to share their work or say anything about their photography or try to position themselves as a photographer that earns money until they have a website or a telephone number or they're an LLC or they've filed their taxes, or everybody has different criteria for that. And then I'm often asked in conjunction with this how I got started and how I went from 3 weddings one year to 30 weddings the next year. So I had massive success very quickly. And I am here to tell you it had nothing to do with the quality of the images because they were terrible. And in fact, one could have labeled me as completely incompetent. For instance, I photographed an entire bridal party. This was 10 to 12 people. I photographed it at f2.8, which means the bride and groom were in focus and nobody else was. Okay, incompetent. Now, in my defense, they get what they pay for. I photographed that wedding for free. But my point is, if you're saying you have to have everything lined up, I personally believe that you are using that as an excuse to not put yourself out there and that you are potentially afraid to be vulnerable and say, hey, listen, I'm putting myself out there, but I don't exactly know entirely what I'm doing. Because what does competent mean anyway in the photography realm? I think that you should be able to take a photo for sure. And if you're photographing weddings, of course you need to be responsible, of course. I'm not saying pull a Heather and go photograph weddings with your point and shoot and have no clue what you're doing. I was fearless, but again, they were asking me to photograph their weddings. I was not getting paid, and the photos I took, well, they were better than the photos that they weren't going to have because they didn't hire a photographer. But in terms of every other type of photography, if you are waiting to get everything lined up, it's never going to happen. And in fact, you have to put yourself out there and photograph so that you understand what exactly needs to be lined up. There are going to be things you don't know. You don't know what you don't know until it happens, and then you have to do something. But saying that you have to have X, Y, Z because you are OCD, process-oriented type A, which I am, by the way, then you're just delaying the inevitable, which is your success. The sooner you put yourself out there, the more experience you will gain, both in terms of photography and working with people and your business, and you can just grow from there. But there is no magic moment because everybody's would be different. There's no actual scale where you say, okay, if I'm here, then I am allowed to put myself out there. Again, there are no photography police on the internet. You can do whatever you want. I guess this was maybe easier for me back in the day because there wasn't any social media. And I was clueless, so naive. I just took my Canon PowerShot G3 and was just photographing anything and everything under the sun, full well knowing I was a terrible photographer and I was incompetent. But I wanted to get the experience so that I could get better. But this begs the question, how did I go from 3 weddings to 30 in 1 year? How did I have so much success in my business when my work was terrible? Because you're all using the excuse that you need to get your work perfect in order to put yourself out there. And the reason is people bought into me. People connect with people. They're not buying your product or your service. They are buying you. And they liked me regardless of my lack of skill. I think that they appreciated my confidence, my willingness to learn. I'm outgoing. I try to have a good personality. I take an interest in people, and they hired me for me, and they recommended me to other people. You guys, full well knowing I was a terrible photographer. I did not take good photos. And if you have joined me on any of my live classes, I have showed these photos. I have done interviews with my first bride. I have posted her photos. I have talked about this. The work wasn't there. So why do you think that the quality of your work is the only thing that dictates whether or not you should put yourself out there, or the fact that you have a website or don't have a website? You want to get everything lined up. It doesn't matter. And I have a couple of things that sort of crystallized this for me this weekend. So my daughter is 16 and she has been applying for jobs everywhere. Well, she finally got an interview this morning at Marshall's, which is a local clothing store. Okay, she has zero experience. She's 16. The only other job she's had, she was babysitting for years, and she had her own little cupcake business a couple of years ago. Okay, but she doesn't have any experience. So how is she going to get hired? And I said to her, how are you going to get hired if you have no experience? Of course, I was coaching her through this. And what it comes down to is personality and attitude. If you believe in yourself, you have a good personality and a good attitude, people are buying into you. Again, they're not purchasing your photos, your product, or your service. Certainly, they're attracted to you for that reason. They are buying into you. So my husband and I were picking up our youngest son from Bible camp this past weekend. We stopped at the Grove City Outlets, which if you're from around here, then you are familiar. It wasn't terribly crowded. I was walking by myself. Craig was in a store, and I came around the corner, and there were, 7 or 8, let's call them more mature women. So these are women, retirement age type women. They had all of their shopping bags lined up against the wall, and they were all standing there with their phones. I said, hey, how are you guys? What do you got going on here? I just took an interest in people. And they said, oh, we're taking photos of all of our bags so that we can send them to our husbands and show them how much money we saved. And I said, well, if it were me, I don't think I would be showing him how much money I saved through my purchases. I think I would just not send him anything, and they laughed. And I said, why don't you guys get in with your bags? Hand me one of your phones. I'll take a photo. Would you do that? Yeah, of course. What else am I doing? So I set them up. They had all their fancy bags, and I took a whole bunch of photos, and I said, well, let me turn this way, and this is more flattering, and don't do this. You look like a linebacker, angle. Okay, I took all of these photos, and they were so gracious, and they thanked me repeatedly, and one of them said, it's like you're a photographer or something, and I said, actually I am, but I teach photography and I just love people. And this was fun, and I saw you guys with your bags. Okay, we walked into the same store together because we were headed that direction. And I talked to these ladies for probably another 15 minutes. And turns out they're from this area, but they're snowbirds living in Florida, and they come here to shop together. And they're telling me all these stories. I'm asking questions. I said, oh, my husband and I would love to do that someday, but we still have children at home, and we'll get to that point, and when we're empty nesters, maybe I'll experience empty nest syndrome for about 2.3 seconds. Of course, I love my kids, but out they go. Anyway, it was just a really good conversation, and they were talking to me, and one of the women said, I love you. How can I connect with you? I just love your personality. You're so fun. Okay, you guys, all it takes, literally, all it takes is showing an interest in people, because the next thing somebody's going to say is, well, I can't do that, Heather. I'm shy, or I'm an introvert. To which I say, okay, what's your next excuse? You can show an interest in people. It's not about being the most interesting person or having the biggest personality. If you I always tell Ella, just be a person. Just be a person. Just talk to people and show an interest. They will love you forever. So I connected with these women. I'm actually hoping to hear from them. Why? I don't know. I just made 7 or 8 new friends at the outlets. And I said to Craig, and he came in, and I said, hey, everybody, this is my husband. And I said, these are all my new friends. And they laughed, and we talked for another couple minutes. And we walked out of that store, and I said to him, that's the difference. I love people. I show an interest in people. It was 100% 100% my personality that got me those 30 weddings, because it had nothing to do with the quality of the images or my lack of a website, having a website, not having a website, my camera gear. None of that mattered. All that matters is that you are connecting with people. So I told Ella this morning as she's going to her interview, you just have to just be a person, have a personality, talk to people, have a good attitude, show an interest. She said, well, what do I say if they ask, what can I bring to the table, or what's the advantage of having me? And I said, well, you're a Marshall's customer, aren't you? You shop there at least once a week. That means you are intimately familiar with their target market, because you are their target market. So of course I coached her through all this, and wouldn't you know it, she got hired on the spot. Praise the Lord, because she needed a job. We needed her to get a job, but she didn't have any experience. I didn't have any experience. So this whole notion of I have to get things lined up so that they're right, or so that my photos are good, those words are completely relative. There's no measuring stick to say when things are right. It's all made up in your mind, or when your photos are good. Therefore, I encourage you to put yourself out there now. Listen, if you don't want to charge for your photos, oh, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But if you are holding yourself back from sharing your work because you're afraid of what other people will think, or you have to have things a certain way, I would love if you could let me know what your next excuse is, because I just debunked all of those. It doesn't have anything to do with the quality of your images. It is all about connecting with people, and all it takes is having a personality. When I teach at my local college, the first thing I say is, hi everyone, I'm Heather. I've perfected the art of taking horrible photographs. If you take a whole bunch of horrible photographs, eventually you'll get a few that are decent, and then maybe you can improve from there. And that's literally the truth. It's just that I connected with people via my personality. So later on in the class, I have them kind of pair up and photograph one another, and I say, okay, if you don't have a personality, and you struggle in this regard, then I'm going to go ahead and suggest that you run on down to Walmart and see if you can buy one, because it takes a connection with people. You can read books on this, whatever it takes to get you out of shy introvert to I can talk with people and I have a personality. And if you honestly feel like you just can't do that, you're too shy, you're too introverted, then you need to create an alter ego. This is a real thing. It's been studied. When you are putting yourself out there, a lot of people, actors are a great example of this, they separate themselves from like Heather the person to Heather the performer. And trust me, it is a performance. When you are working with people, you are on stage. Therefore, if you can separate that out, like, it's not me, it's just this alter ego, it's just this other side to my personality. I mean, if you think about it, you're not the same person, say, with your spouse or your kids as you are with a friend at work or your boss at work, right? You're different people. You have different sides, different alter egos, if you will, and you can turn those off and be whoever you want to be. One of my favorite things is to go to weddings where I don't know a soul. In fact, I prefer that over weddings where I know people. Why? Because I can be anybody I want. They don't know me. They don't know where I've come from. They don't know anything about me. So I can be whoever I want, which means I can put on this alter ego. It's a performance. It's not disingenuous. It's about showing up and caring about people. You can borrow my charisma, borrow my confidence, borrow my personality until you figure out how to develop this alter ego of your own. It is possible, but don't wait until you have everything lined up or perfect or just right because you have to be this certain kind of person. It's a performance, and you can show interest in, I am thinking that I need to put something together, maybe in the membership group for introverts or people who consider themselves shy, on how to sort of develop. I'm actually going to work on this. Thank you for the suggestion. I hope that you found this useful. I'll see you in the next video.